perfect start for Red Bull with a Max and Checo 1-2. A nightmare for Ferrari with a Leclerc engine failure, denying him a podium. And a dream start for Alonso, capitalising on Ferrari's woes, overtaking Hamilton and Sainz on track to score third on his first outing for his new team. Red Bull's rivals say they're on another planet. They'll win every race. They've found something big in their race pace. Really? I'm Martin Lee from the Autosport Podcast, joined by Jonathan Noble at the Bahrain International Circuit and Matt Q back here. All right, let's get into how good Red Bull really are. John, they look in control. What do you think it means for the season?
I think it means Red Bull dominance for now. I mean, this is Formula One. Turnarounds can happen. Teams can make rapid progress, but I think there is no doubt Red Bull are a step ahead of everybody. I mean, the gap today, pulling out half a second on the thing, is what we feared coming here, or the rivals definitely feared coming here. Seemed under control. Max was managing his pace. I don't think he was, pushed very much. Maybe made a bit of an effort on lap 1, 2 to pull clear. So for now, I think it's Red Bull by far the best team, but behind that, I think it looks very, very good.
Matt, what do you think this means for the season so far?
Probably a bit of a reality check, I think, after the Friday practice pace and how Alonso sort of fared on Saturday morning. We're thinking, oh, blimey, it might be a two-way thing here. Oh dear, Red Bull are struggling with a bit of understeer, and this battle might be a bit more hotly contested than we thought. But then, this just goes to show that everything we saw from testing was right, and Red Bull have stolen early March. Very imposing victory, and even within that, you've got the narrative again of, okay, Perez, was caught napping at the start a little bit, but even then didn't quite have the pace to match Verstappen. So it's sort of 2022 part 2, if you like.
Now, John, Aston Martin look like they've built a really solid car, well balanced. Alonso showed us that magic that we know he has, almost nerfed off at the first corner by his teammate, who he was only told it was Stroll after the checkered flag today, and they explained the situation over the radio he was trying to get Russell and then Alonso cut back. So what do you think about the Aston Martin now we've seen it in race pace?
Well, I think we should be quite thankful they've made this step, really, because I think if it wasn't for Aston Martin, that race today, I think it would have been very, very boring, not much action at all, because I think it was fairly clear that Red Bull are street ahead. Ferrari seem a bit ahead of Mercedes. Then behind that we've got Aston Martin have made this leap. I mean, mightily impressive to have made such a jump over the winter. I think qualifying wise, third, fourth quickest car, but race pace, I think it is the second quickest car at the moment, especially on this type of track. It's still quite draggy, but I think in terms of downforce levels and tyre degradation, on Sundays it's the second quickest car, and I think it can be a race winner.
After the race, Felipe Drugovich, who's driven that car, said that a bit more top-end speed, and they're going to be absolutely in a great place this season. I think they are already. But, Matt, what do you think it makes the Aston Martin such a great car? What is it about the package they've put together that worked so well?
Oh, I'm glad you asked, Martin, because John and I for this year have devised a new piece that goes up after qualifying, see what makes each car tick and sort of separates the Red Bull from Ferrari. And we could factor in the Aston Martin being a sort of such a big talking point, and it's always nice when what you can see backs up sort of the reality, and it's what Alonso can do in the braking zones, really, particularly in his battles. When he was chasing Hamilton and Sainz, you can see him visually sort of take half a dozen yards out of each of those two in the braking zones, and that's where the Aston was excelling. Fernando Alonso, the way he could get that car stopped, and its sort of low speed, its mechanical grip. They're the things that sort of give it the one lap pace. And then why we saw Alonso come to fore is because the Aston was up there with the Red Bull in terms of how it could manage degradation. I've seen Russell, I think it was, after qualifying, comparing the surface of Bahrain to being like a cheese grater. It's one of the most abrasive. For anyone who saw the F2 races, those Pirellis were just flicking bits of rubber everywhere. It's a really sort of coarse surface, and yet the Aston, for all of Alonso taking the time out of Hamilton and Sainz, he then didn't really have to suffer the consequences of it. The tyres lasted. He could gap Sainz by another 4 seconds at the end. And I think that's where the difference was in that final stint, why there wasn't the drop-off. So as sort of to back what John was saying, to back that up, if you can tune it a bit more on the street, certainly what it's doing at lower speeds is making all the difference.
And John, it wasn't a one-man show. Teammate Lance Stroll's only been in that car 2 days. 12 days ago was having surgery. He raced with broken bones. I spent the last quarter of the race watching Alonso's on board on the brilliant new feature we've got this year where you can watch anybody. I was doing it online, not through the TV. So I was listening on the team radio. Let me just check my notes. Alonso, while they were explaining to him where to go in terms of the FIA, podium stops and stuff like that. It's been a while since he was up there, since 2021. He said, "Lance is my hero, what a result." And there was a swearier version of that, I think, on the live feed as well before the interviews. John, what do you think about Lance Stroll's performance?
No, I think you've got to take your hat off for him this weekend. Whether he did the right thing in being so secret about kind of the bike accident he had, the injuries he had. But, now that the kind of the truth has come out, definitely one broken wrist, potentially two, a broken toe. Being unable to do anything with his hands, being unable to walk 12 days ago, going through surgery, coming back, fighting the pain on Friday, not having tested the car, and to have done what he did this weekend, I think, pretty phenomenal. And I think it puts a lie to all the suggestions that Stroll's not particularly interested in being a Formula One driver. It's all his dad pushing him to do it. I think this proves the commitment he's got. I think it proves the speed he's got. And I think it also proves how quick that Aston Martin is, because to have come back like he has, been able to do that, shows this car must be easy to get up to speed with, being able to push it, take it to the limit. So I think not only can it potentially win a race this year, but I think on the right track, on the right day, with a little bit of luck, Aston could get a 1-2.
So Matt, Ferrari, reliability, here we go again, an engine failure. Same old problems, just coincidence? How are you reading that for the rest of the season?
Not the same old problems in a sense. It wasn't a massive, spectacular, big end explosion as we had, particularly memorably in Spain and Azerbaijan. This was sort of more on the electrics. We saw that Leclerc had the battery change before the race, and I think his second control unit as well. So already pushing the limits after a couple of days into the season, and then Ferrari did sort of put out a vague memo later saying we can confirm it was an engine problem on Leclerc's car, but I'm guessing, like the line they pedalled last year, there'll be the full sort of deep dive at Maranello to understand quite what's going on. But obviously that is concerning, and it's easy to poke fun, but there were a couple of bits throughout the weekend where I think it was in qualifying, Leclerc's coming out of the garage complaining about a bit of a retardation on the clutch, and you're sort of thinking, oh dear. And then I noticed on the world feed there was just the message, we're considering doing plan A, and you get deja vu to plans A to F last year, whether this is just a start. But how much do you read into it straight away? I don't know. It could just be a horrible, horrible coincidence, but I'm sure there are many better qualified body language experts than I looking at how demure Leclerc was when he hopped over the barrier, thinking, oh dear, here we go again. That is one issue. I think with Ferrari, though, yes, they're citing degradation here being much more extreme and that they can play a much bigger role in the race in Jeddah next time out. But they weren't really anywhere. Apart from making Perez sweat at the start, Leclerc got into second place, never took a challenge to Verstappen. I think Verstappen's 1.8 seconds clear within 2 laps, 6.5 seconds clear within 10 laps. That's a worry. The Formula One sort of we talk of and classify as Class A used to be 3 teams, and then the midfield. Well, it's now Class A star for Red Bull, and then a Class A minus where Ferrari and the rest are. And that's the big gulf that we need to see get closed up.
John, this time last year, we saw a double DNF for Red Bull. We saw the engine locking up on Perez at turn 1 and spun him round. And, and they went on to have a mega season. But is it panic stations at Ferrari yet, John?
I don't think it's panic stations, but I think it's big head scratching, need some answers very, very quickly. I spoke to Fred Vasseur tonight. I said to him, look, your main rival, Mercedes, has accepted the current car is not going to be able to develop to fight at the front with Red Bull. It needs a new concept, it needs a rethink, it needs a new direction, which is probably going to wait to 2024. Do you have faith the Ferrari concept is the right direction? And he says, yes, I do. I said he thinks that the potential it showed in qualifying on Saturday was the right way to go, that actually it's a setup issue, it's a tyre degradation issue, he thinks they can sort it. So for now he has complete faith, but I'm not so convinced. If you look at the podium today, there is 3 Red Bull concepts in 1, 2 and 3. They're by far the quickest car on Sunday. I think we're seeing a direction and confirmation that there is one route to success in Formula 1, and it's that downwash solution.
Well, John, I'll stay with you. I don't know if you've spoken to anyone from the Mercedes team there in Bahrain after the race, but I've got in my notes here from Toto said, and the quote is, "That was one of our worst days in racing. The Aston Martins are very fast and the Red Bull is just on a different planet. It hurts that they are so far ahead." And of course, Aston Martin, a customer. So, goodness me, is it Mercedes time for a complete concept change? That tends to be the gist of the news stories coming out of Saturday in Bahrain. What do you think?
Yeah, I think it is. I wrote a piece this morning on RaceMon look at the Mercedes situation that, yesterday they qualified 6/10 off pole position. You go back exactly 6/10 off pole position. But I think what was different 12 months ago is that they knew from wind tunnel figures there was a second and a half of potential in the car to move forward. That's what gave them the belief and conviction they could do it. They got there, they won in Brazil. But this year they've hit their performance targets. They set ambitious targets. The car's performing exactly as they anticipated it to be. They know there's a 2-3 temps coming with the upgrade side pod change that's coming potentially for Imola. But that's it. That's not going to get them on a level of Red Bull. It probably won't even get them on the level of Aston Martin. So they need to change direction. They need to do something different. I mean, definitely they've got to rethink completely for 24. The question is, what can they do this season? What is possible in the short term to move forward? And the critical dilemma now is, do you stop development on this car and throw everything into the new concept and try and get it on board as quick as possible? Or do you kind of push forward a little bit for this season and throw more into 24 further down the line, potentially compromise that? So I think that's the decision they need to take, and I think they need to take it very, very quickly.
Matt, John just mentioned 6/10 in qualifying, but in a race that was almost 60 laps long, the two Mercedes cars coming home almost 60 seconds behind the leader. How worried are Mercedes going to be that they're just going to write off 2023?
Well, it's a real possibility. I mean, I think something that's alarming is this a massive change in sentiment that we've seen over sort of the last week. That they came out of testing happy that there was no porpoising, and then the next day they were really disconcerted by the balance issues, and then the final day they thought it was better, and then there's been some positivity through the first couple of days here that they can do overnight changes that I think brought 5-6 tenths, which is 5 times what they were expecting, but then they weren't really sure why it had been so successful. And among all this is that is chasing performance, whereas last year they lost 3/4 of the season to solving fundamental problems. This year it's fine-tuning, so as John says, they're already closer to their limit.
Yeah, really disconcerting. John, your thoughts on Alfa Romeo? Another solid set of points for Bottas, finishing in 8th. Bottas and points in Bahrain go together like him getting naked on his social media. You can almost guarantee it. Let's talk a little bit about how you thought Alfa... Oh, and a fastest lap for Zhou, weirdly, at the end as well. Just catching up to Alonso, weaving around because he crossed the line, just about getting that fastest lap in. But your thoughts on Alfa Romeo?
I think they're fairly happy with it. I mean, you've got this clear pecking order in at the moment. You've got Red Bull well out in front. Then you've got this kind of Aston Martin, Ferrari, second quickest in qualifying, Ferrari, then Aston second quickest in the race, third and fourth. Mercedes, I think, currently the fourth fastest. And then after that, I think it's, almost anybody's game. This midfield is so ridiculously tight that 1 tenth or 2 tenths is going to be the difference between qualifying up in Q3 or getting dumped out in Q1, so it's all to play for. We've seen Williams get up there, score points. We've seen McLaren had the potential to score points. Alpine could have been up there, and some of these have big shambles, but Alfa Romeo delivered. They think they were the 5th quickest car today. They're pretty happy with the progress. They know development needs to come on. So for a start, very solid, but they need to keep development up. That was the thing. They kind of fell away last season. Now it's a case of bringing on that performance, making the most of the kind of extra investment that's come into the team and pushing on.
And a word on Alpine, if you could, John, as well. A great result for Gasly. Great recovery drive from the back of the grid to finish in 9th. And Esteban Ocon single-handedly keeping the stewards busy, handing out penalties today. What did you make of how that sets up Alpine's season?
Not very good at the moment. I think this was a race to forget for Alpine. Gasly, I think Gasly did a right start at the back, got trapped a bit early on, but the pace was there later on to make progress and get some points. But for Ocon, I think it kind of tumbled out of control from the start, out of position on the grid start. Then a problem with the front wing. Then took his penalty, but there was an offset on the kind of the official stopwatch, so the mechanics were given the bleep to signify they could work on the car, but it started half a second too early, so they started work half a second too early, so they got a penalty for that. Then Ocon took a penalty and got a speeding for that one, so it's just tumbled out of control, and they withdrew the car at the end, so there's no point. He was so far back at that stage. So operationally, not a good race for Alpine. Pace-wise, they don't particularly know. They think there's more to come from it. They think they're quicker than Alfa Romeo, but yet to be proven. So I think they need to make some progress in Jeddah, just to prove that they've got this potential to push on for fourth that they're convinced they can do.
Absolutely. And Matt, as for Williams, points on the board already after the first race. A brilliant result for them. I think the car looked pretty good at certain stages of the race today. Alex Albon looked delighted after, and Logan Sargent, what a great outing for him as well, finishing just outside the points. How do you think the car looked in terms of what this sets up for the next few races?
It's a great result for Williams to start off with. I mean, they were the nailed-on back marker for the season, so to be vying for points, pretty much on merit, and with the argument that they could have performed even stronger in qualifying, I think that's an exceptional result. Still the usual problems, lack of downforce, but, Jeddah, high speed, that might come to pay off handsomely. So, depending on how they develop, obviously without a technical director, I think they need to hit hard early, and that's exactly what they did, and arguably the star rookie performance was Sargent, so that was good. Of the two sort of towards the back teams, Williams should be absolutely delighted with that, way better than they were expecting.
And John, I'll stay with you simply because you're there in Bahrain. AlphaTauri, Yuki, 11th again in Bahrain. What did you make of how their car looked? Because after testing, some big question marks over the work that AlphaTauri have to do this year.
I think they're facing an uphill task. It's not as quick as they want to be. I think the car's lacking downforce, not quick enough in a straight line. They're already under pressure, having finished 9th last season. Questions about the future of the team. So, it's not been a strong weekend for them. I think they know they need to bring improvements quite quickly to this car to go forwards. But I think they'll be encouraged. They came close to points, but I think in the end it was the car that let them down. Yuki closed up on Alex, but Williams' super slippery car and a quite low efficiency AlphaTauri meant there was no chance of getting close to him. So, I think they need to have a deep dig just to work out what they can do to move forward from here.
And then the final couple of teams I want to talk about with you, Matt. First of all, Haas, how do you think they were looking today and how their car looked for the next few races?
I suppose it's just mediocre, isn't it? Hulkenberg, stood a good chance of getting points, but for that early front wing damage and Magnussen's race pace was lacking. So, obviously this time last year, I think Magnussen got 6 after having that private or after hours testing when their freight was delayed. So a bit of a regression from there. And, you have to hope then that going to a smaller pit wall and hopefully not having 2 car snapping crashes will help them later in the season, because as John said, that midfield is so tightly contested that coming away with no points to start with, they're going to have to develop themselves into that into that melting pot. So underwhelming so far, but no not like McLaren fragility or AlphaTauri concerns. It's just a bit bland, I suppose.
All right, actually, John, I'll come back to you to talk about McLaren, because we saw, unfortunately for Piastri's first outing, a retirement and a 6-stop Lando Norris. Oh, dear. And yet, at times, he was keeping up with Hamilton and Alonso when they were fighting. It's not really in a maintenance phase of the Grand Prix, so they weren't taking it easy, and Norris was keeping up with them. So can you explain, what happened with McLaren today in terms of pace and reliability?
Reliability not good. Obviously, Oscar had this electronic problem, and Norris, I think, was a kind of pneumatic valve leaking, so they kept kind of pushing the pressure up, which just spiraled out of control and dropped him down. So, a bad start for the team. We knew they were on the back foot coming into this year, but I think potentially wasn't as bad as they feared. Perhaps the indications were it's going to be the 8th, 9th quickest team this weekend. Wasn't looking good, especially on Friday, but I think it nudged forward. They seem to be in that midfield mix where, again, 1/10, 2/10 is going to be the difference between fighting for points or heading home on Sunday very disappointed. So I think there's a few positives to take forward. There's talk of upgrades already coming for Saudi Arabian Grand Prix to push them forward. But I think until they make this big step that's coming for Baku, I don't think we can expect to be regularly challenging Q3 and battling for a lot of points.
Okay, good shout. All right, chaps, thank you both for your time tonight as we look a little bit back, but more interested in looking forward at the next few races and what we think this means for the new season of Formula One. But now we want to hear what you think in the comments below. What do you think of today's action and what you think it sets up, not just for the next kind of 3 flyaway races, but also for 2023? Leave us your thoughts below. Loved reading your stuff post-testing. We've been told that we were far too much on the Aston Martin hype train, so feeling a little bit vindicated on that. We were, I was certainly crucified for saying McLaren could be at the back with Williams, and I got that wrong because, well, Williams scored points today, and McLaren really were at the times at the back. Let us know your thoughts. I want to hear whether you think we're right, we're wrong, and what you think that could mean for 2023 as we look forward. Thank you very much for watching. If you liked this video, hit like and subscribe to the channel if you're new to us, and we'll catch you on the next one.